What if everything you were taught about world history was only the beginning of the story? For centuries, Africa has been spoken about as a land of mystery, poverty, and darkness. But what if the real story is the opposite? What if Africa is the fountain, the source of humanity, civilization, science, agriculture, writing, and spiritual systems that shaped the world long before Europe existed? Today, we travel deep into forgotten kingdoms, ancient ruins, sacred rivers, and archaeological sites that textbooks never mention. This is the lost fountain of African history, the truth they never taught us. The one, the fountain of humanity. When archaeologists traced the origins of the human species, every path led back to Africa. In the Great Rift Valley of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania, scientists uncovered the oldest human fossils on Earth, from Australopithecus to Homo habilis to Homo sapiens. This region is known as the cradle of humankind. But African oral traditions had already said this for thousands of years. Ancient creation stories from the Khoisan, Yoruba, Akan, and Igbo describe humanity emerging from African soil, rivers, and mountains. Science confirmed what Africa already knew. Humanity started here. 2. The Nile, Africa's real fountain of civilization. One of the greatest mysteries in world history is the Nile River, the longest river on Earth. Its source flows from the heart of Africa. Mountie, Lake Victoria. The Ethiopian highlands, the Great Lakes region. Ancient Egyptians called the Nile Hapi, the river of life. But they also wrote that their ancestors came from the south, from deeper Africa. Modern research confirms that. The Nile Valley civilizations were heavily influenced by Nubia, Kush, Punt, and the Horn of Africa. The earliest pharaohs had strong ties to Upper Egypt and Nubia. Many symbols of Egyptian culture, crowns, rituals, writing, originated further south. Egypt was never separate from Africa. It was Africa. 3. The lost city of Punt, Africa's mystical homeland. Egyptian records describe a mysterious land called Punt, known as the land of the gods. They traveled there to trade. The gaze to Cetus Mesa Deo, gold, ebony, exotic animals. Today, historians believe Punt was located in Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, or eastern Sudan. This region was known for advanced seafaring and international trade, long before the Greeks or Romans existed. Why was Punt called the land of the gods? Because Egyptians believed their spiritual practices originated there. Another piece of the lost fountain. 4. The Empire of Kush, the Black Pharaohs. South of Egypt lay Kush, one of the oldest and strongest kingdoms in African history. The Kushites built pyramids, temples, writing systems, advanced iron industries. When Egypt fell, Kush rose and ruled Egypt as the 25th dynasty, also known as the Black Pharaohs. Pharaohs like Taharka and Pa restored Egypt's glory, unified the Nile Valley, and protected it from invasion. Yet textbooks rarely mention them. Why? Because their story destroys the myth that Africa contributed nothing to world civilization. The Great Zimbabwe, the Forbidden City. In southern Africa stands the ancient stone city of Great Zimbabwe, built between the 11th and 15th centuries. It features Hudui Tun, footballs over 30 feet high, the engineering that required advanced mathematics, a kingdom that controlled gold trade routes to Arabia and Asia. When Europeans first saw Great Zimbabwe, they refused to believe Africans built it. They wrote false theories about Arabs or lost white tribes, because accepting the truth would expose Africa's brilliance. Today, archaeology confirms Great Zimbabwe was 100% African. 6. Timbuktu and the Lost Libraries. In West Africa, the city of Timbuktu became one of the world's greatest centers of learning. By the 1500s, it had over 100,000 manuscripts, universities older than many in Europe, scholars teaching astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and law. Yet Europeans called Africa a continent with no writing. Meanwhile, African scholars wrote entire encyclopedias and scientific documents still preserved today. The destruction of these libraries during colonial wars was one of the greatest intellectual losses in world history. 7. The erased chapter of history. So why was all this history hidden? Because colonial powers discovered something uncomfortable. Africa was not backward. Africa was not primitive. Africa was not empty or undeveloped. Africa was the fountain of human existence, the mother of civilizations, a continent of empires, inventions, science, and writing, long before Europe rose to power. To justify colonization, they had to erase what came before. They needed the world, including Africans, to believe a lie. But today, the truth is rising again. From the Nile Valley to the Great Rift, from Great Zimbabwe to Timbuktu, the lost fountain of African history is being rediscovered. And the world can no longer hide it, because history belongs to everyone. And Africa's story is the story of humanity itself. This is the real African history, the history they never taught us.